everybody, it's Sarah, and today I am here with, as you can probably see from the title, my worst reads of 2019. This is the second in my 2019 wrap-up type of series. I already uploaded the first video, which was kind of my reading year in review. I talked about all the goals that I had at the beginning of 2019 and whether or not I achieved them, and also talked a bit about my general statistics in my reading in 2019. So if you're interested in that, I will leave it linked down below and also up here. I decided to upload my worst reads as my second video because I want to end my wrap-up of 2019 on a positive note, but as soon as I have uploaded my best books of 2019, I will also leave that link down below and up here as well. That should come in the next few days as well. Usually I'd probably go the route of most booktubers and just choose most disappointing books of the year and not worst books of the year. Usually I also don't rate books as low as I rated them this year. I had quite a few books this year that I rated 2 stars and lower, so I thought I had enough books that warrant like the worst title instead of the most disappointing title. And also I consciously said worst reads and not worst books because while I do think that some of the books that I have are just bad books, I just kind of went by reading experience and not just if the book is objectively bad or not, because there are also some books that I would personally say aren't objectively bad books, but that I just really didn't enjoy reading. So let me just jump right into it. I have 5 books which for once will be ranked, so I will start with the least worst book and then get to the worst book, and I want to talk a bit about why I didn't enjoy each book and so on. So let me start with number 5, and that is Dracula by Bram Stoker. I read this in October, and yeah, I think I gave it 2 stars. And the sad thing is I did really enjoy the beginning of this book. I thought it was really interesting. I did know that the story of Dracula isn't exactly as we're familiar with from a lot of the movies and like the kind of pop culture version of Dracula that has become so popular. But I just thought that it was a little bit of a lot of nothing. And there wasn't that much that happened during the book. I had a really hard time getting through this book. So even though I enjoyed it at the beginning, the longer it went on, it just started dragging, and then the end was very quick and there wasn't really any climax. And it just was kind of, yeah, I just didn't really like that. The things I did enjoy about this book, however, were kind of the way Dracula was portrayed, to kind of see where that classic horror vampire comes from. I also really enjoyed Mina, so the main female character. I thought she was a really interesting female character because on the one hand it was made very obvious that she's not like as strong as the men, not as smart as the men. She says herself at one point like, no, I'm not as smart as you by far. But at the same time, I also felt that even though she didn't say it and the man didn't say it, she was portrayed in a way where she did kind of hold her own, which I found really interesting. I found like these opposites that were portrayed in her really interesting. And yeah, sadly, I think ultimately the reason why I didn't enjoy it as much as I could have is that I just do not know enough about classics from this time and also this time in general to really get all the nuances in the writing and kind of all the societal stuff that was woven into the book. So yeah, that kind of made me not enjoy it, but I can still appreciate what it did for literature, and yeah. So that's my number 5 worst book of 2019. Then next I have Shadow of a Dark Queen by Raymond E. Feist, which is the first book in the Serpent Boar saga, which kind of belongs to a huge cycle of fantasy books by Raymond E. Feist, which I think is called the Midkemia cycle or something like that. So that was the first reason, I think, why I didn't enjoy it as much, because I didn't know that there were like series set in that world beforehand that probably would have given me a lot of backdrop to the story or to where this story starts. So that was something that I just lacked. But the reason why I didn't like this was mostly because it's a classic fantasy book. And I can enjoy classic fantasy books, but this was just a classic fantasy books that just everything that's the worst about classic fantasy books. You have a boring hero, you have women that are treated the worst. Basically, the way women are depicted in this, if they appear, which they almost don't ever appear, is either the mother, the like holy virgin, or the prostitute, and that's it. Maybe the old crone as well, but it was kind of like, didn't enjoy it as much, although there was one woman who kind of knew magic and did fight a little bit. But the reason why this ended up making it on my worst of 2019, I read this in August, by the way, for the Nudes, is, and I already ranted about this in my Nudes wrap-up as well, is that there is this specific thing that happens. So you have the main character, and at the very beginning of his book, his childhood friend, his childhood female friend, who basically is like a sister to him, but it's already hinted at that at least she feels something more for him, and maybe he does as well. But at this moment he feels like a brother for her, and she is raped at the very beginning of this book. And so here we have the first thing, because like hurting women as an incentive moment for our hero is like a big pet peeve and one of the laziest styles of writing ever. And it was the incentive moment in this. She is raped, he kills the rapist, who is some type of duke's son or whatever, and so he's sent to jail and supposed to be killed, but instead he's sent off to this other continent to fight in a war or whatever. So if that hadn't been bad enough, later on in the book he has sex for the first time with a prostitute, of course, because he's at war and there's only prostitutes there. Anyway, he has sex for the first time, and shortly afterwards he thinks back to that moment his basically sister was raped, but instead of thinking back on the rage and how horrible this rape was, he only remembers how her clothes were ripped open and he saw her supple breasts. And he like beats off to that and gets an erection and comes to that, and it's really really disgusting. So yeah, that's why this made my worst books. I kind of feel bad on putting this one lower than the other one, because like objectively the other one is lower, but in terms of my enjoyment this one is worse, because with the other one I kind of just felt like there were some scenes where I felt tension and where I was mildly interested in the story, but with this one that just didn't happen at all, and that is Emma by Jane Austen. And this is another one of those books where I can see that it's a good book, but it just really really wasn't for me. I really didn't like Jane Austen's writing style. I was bored throughout the book, and with a 500-page book that's like hard to get through. And yeah, I just ended up being really confused because I started unconsciously skim reading, and then I got confused with the names, and then I didn't know what was going on anymore. And yeah, I mean, I have a hard time sometimes reading classics or getting into classics, but usually by page 100 I'm kind of into the writing style, and I can kind of tell if it's worth pushing through and if it's worth me like trying consciously to like get a lot of the story. And with this one I just didn't get into the writing style. I found the writing style just wasn't my cup of tea. So yeah, that made me kind of sad, and that's why this one is on my list. So far the first 3 books on this list were 2-star reads, and the last 2 books are 1-star reads. Sadly, I only gave 3 books in my history with Goodreads only 1 star, and 2 of those books were this year. So yeah, first I have Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J. Maas. Probably no one is surprised that this is on here. It's the 7th book and the last book in the Throne of Glass series. I think I read it in November, and man, this book is about 500 pages too long, and I hated Aelin. The characters have absolutely no depth. They're basically cardboard cutouts of each other. And I just really didn't like this book. My main problem, as always, is that Sarah J. Maas borrows a lot from The Black Jewels by Anne Bishop, which is my favorite series of all time. And yeah, I just really hated this book. And if you want to know more of my thoughts, I have a whole rant review, which I will leave linked down below and up there, which I got like, I got a comment on New Year's Eve just saying, I disagree. Which, by the way, was written wrongly. It was written, I disagree, but I often write things wrong, so no judgment there. And then, because it was at night, I was like, okay, saw it, whatever. And then the next day, I opened it again, and it had been changed to, I disagree, but I don't care. And I was like, obviously you do, otherwise you wouldn't have commented. Just, what? Why? I mean, yeah, it's my opinion. No judgment if you think this book is the best ending to a series of all time. You would be wrong, but no judgment there. So yeah, that was just a funny story with this book that I thought I'd share. And then the worst book of the year. Man, oh man. I think if you've been on my channel since the beginning of the year, you will know which book I'm going to talk about. This book also has a review, by the way, which I will leave linked down below and up there, or a rant review. And funnily enough, it's the video that had most views this year, that had most comments and interactions in general this year, that I'm still kind of proud of. I still think I made a lot of good points in that rant review, but it's the one video on my channel that has more dislikes than likes. And to be honest, I'm also a little bit proud of that. But the thing that I like about that other rant review, which again I didn't have with Kingdom of Ash, on that other rant review I got a lot of really good comments of people telling me why they think differently about that book compared to the way I think, and not just I disagree, fuck off. So yeah, but that book is The Puppy War by R.F. Kuang. And it's not a bad book in and of itself. I just think that it's highly, highly, highly problematic. For those of you who don't know, this is a fantasy book set in a world that is very heavily inspired by Chinese history. And that is also the reason why I think it's very problematic. It especially features stuff that happened in China, like the rape of Nanjing, and the bad guys in this book basically are Japan, or they're like Japanese inspired. And I just think that something happens at the end of the book that I won't say that something like that can't happen at the end of a book and that your main character can't do this at the end of the book, whatever. But I just thought the way it was executed was in a way that it just, to me, felt like the author excused horrible, like the worst action that I ever saw a main character do in a book. And that says a lot. I read a lot of horrible books. I read Game of Thrones, for example. But yeah, I just really didn't like that. And I just thought that the way the Japanese were written in this book was in a way that it excused the action against them because they're monsters, which makes everything kind of more problematic. And I just thought that was problematic because the things the Japanese did in this book, again, were things the Japanese did in real life, and they're monstrous, but they're done by humans, and it kind of diminishes the horror of what happened by just portraying those Japanese people in this book as monsters and not as humans, which I personally thought that was how it was done. So yeah, but if you want to know all of my thoughts, although it is a bit spoilery, although I still would tell you to watch that review, I did say that in that rant review as well. I think even if you haven't read this book, you should still watch my review and then decide if you want to read this or not. And it just makes me kind of sad that most people I see review this, I never see talk about this. I see the people talk about that this isn't a well-written book, which is true in some instances. It's not the best written book, it has some pacing issues, but I did mostly enjoy like the first half of the book. But I never see people talk about the ending of this book in positive or in negative ways, and that just upsets me in a way. And yeah, it just definitely makes the worst books of my year list. I still kind of maybe want to give the second book a chance and see if kind of the way the main character does at the end is portrayed a little bit differently, and I basically only kept this so I can have like a physical copy of a worst book if I ever need it for a tag. And also, it's kind of sad, but it's really pretty, which doesn't matter anyway. I had such a hard time looking for this book because I put it in the back at the very top of my shelf, and I was like, where the fuck did I put it? I don't think I unhauled it. But anyway, yeah, that's it for this video. This is it for the worst book of 2019. And with that said, I really hope you enjoyed this video. Tell me in the comments down below if you have read any of the books that I have read. Do you like them? Do you dislike them? Why do you like them? Why do you dislike them? What are your worst books of 2019? If you enjoyed this video, please maybe think about giving me a thumbs up and also maybe subscribing. All the links to my social media are in the description box down below, so go and check those out. Again, the links to my rant reviews are in the description box down below, as well as to my other 2019 wrap-up videos, the ones that I uploaded already. And with that said, I hope I'll see you soon. Bye!